Hello and welcome to the Fellowship Phase, an Adventures in Middle-earth podcast. I'm Josh and that's Callum. We're going to give you inside information on how to find your own path through Tolkien's world.
Far, far below the deepest delving of the dwarfs, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not. They are older than he. Now, I have walked there, but I will bring no report to darken the light of day.
Hello, Callum.
Hello, Josh.
That sent a shiver down my spine, that introduction.
Well, maybe something will come and remove your spine.
That's an ominous thought. What are we talking about today?
I'm just thinking about all these alien RPGs that we play, and Josh is so good at creating horror. And I think my horror would just be like medical horror.
Medical horror would work.
Yeah, oh dear. What are we talking? Well, I don't know if we can really put a name to the things that we're going to be talking about.
Well, I really left myself open for
Can't title it.
If we were to title it, would we title it Nameless Things, perhaps?
Or things that are the things that shall not be named?
That feels like that's from a different thing.
I think it's a different thing, yeah. Nameless Things.
Nameless Things, which appear on page 164 of the new Lord of the Rings RPG 5th edition. This is something we've been quite excited to talk about, and it's a part of Middle-earth lore that, I must say, I don't know a huge amount about, and I think is ripe for discussion, ripe for rules, because it feels like an area that Tolkien touched on a bit, but never really fleshed out quite deliberately, because it is a kind of unspoken, nameless thing. So maybe you could kick us off telling us what you know as a lore master about the concept of nameless things, and then we are going to create one.
I think part of this harks back to what James, our guest, mentioned on the Shadow episodes, and I will bow to his superior Tolkien knowledge in the Legendarium, but my understanding of the nameless things is that it's a concept that Tolkien loosely introduces, which is, there's all the mythos within the Silmarillion about the creation of the world of Arda, of the Valar and the Maiar being the beings that are, the most powerful beings. Not really gods, but they're at the beginning. And Gandalf suggesting that these nameless things are older than Sauron suggests that they were actually there before the physical arrival of some of the Maiar to Arda.
Yeah.
And we know that in the song that created the world by, I think it's Eru, who's or Luvatar, there is this discord brought into the music of the world, and I think there's a lot of debate online about what exactly these nameless things are. We see one example of them in the book and in the films as the Watcher in the water outside the west gates of Moria in the water, and there's some thoughts that it's crawled out of deeper places. And it's also mentioned about the Durensbane, the Balrog, had navigated sort of tunnels deep in the dark. And I guess the idea is that these are unreally knowable, undescribable, unthinkable horrors from a deeper time of Middle-earth that lurk in the deepest parts of the earth, and kind of ties into some of the themes that, darkness and unknown is where evil lurks, and knowledge can be freeing and light. Yes. And that's shadow, that's so great that it isn't described. We don't want to know what these are, because so much of horror,
yes,
as a theme, is about the unknown and the uncertainty, and that's, I guess, why they're so terrifying.
Yes, the more that you describe or shine a light on something, often the less scary it is, because people's imagination is often so much more powerful at creating that sense of fear. Now, Tolkien, don't think particularly invented the concept of this unknowable evil or horror, and actually it appears in other literature a little bit earlier. So Lovecraft touches on a lot with sort of eldritch horrors, the idea of things that are almost not able to be understood by the human mind. They're so complex and evil and frightening. And it feels like it kind of touches on that. I think its place in the game is fun because the game is very much about like delving into dungeons and dark places. The essence of which is we are here at a current time and we're exploring something from an earlier age. So often if the earlier ages are more magical and mightier and the world is fading, so you get to see these amazing ruins, and that's kind of the essence of a lot of fantasy, is about exploring that. This feels like the kind of dark part of that, which is there are evil, fouler things than the kind of day-to-day enemies that you face. You're maybe not going to encounter the Watcher in the Water in every session, but the fact that it's present in the world gives this sense of, you know, the world is old and you're very fleeting in it. Now the new rules have a section in the kind of the monster section which runs through orcs and goblins, and I'm just flicking through here. We've got the Hound of Sauron, there are rules for that, wargs. There is a section, page 164, about nameless things and actually creating them. And what I like is that they've not tried to define it too much, because I think if they really defined it, it would take away from this. What they've done instead is created a series of tables, very evocative, which you can roll on or you can pick from to give you the kind of loose idea of what this nameless thing might be without spoiling the horror and unknowable sense of it. And you could use it in your game.
I love it because it's sometimes in 5th edition I find that, like, if you're particularly familiar with the game and you've played a lot, sometimes it's like you start the DM starts describing a monster or puts a token down or something, and you're like, oh, it's a beholder, and then you suddenly know all the things about it. And I think knowing is half the battle. So then you're like, okay, well, you know, it's hard not to metagame. Whereas this, there's so much like random stuff in it, and it gives you some rules to work by. But I think it's a really creative way of using this part of Tolkien's lore in a way that feels true to it, but also really like useful for a lore master to then put into their game in some way or the other. Yeah. And I'm really excited to use it.
They have a kind of template stat block in the book for Nameless Thing, and it's laid out like a normal stat block would be. But a lot of the details are not filled in, and they refer to the tables that we're about to roll on. So Nameless Thing is huge or gargantuan, depending on what we roll. Its strength, its dex, and its con are all related to one of the tables. Its armor classes, as are its hit points. It does have a speed, and it does have some skills, but a lot of its abilities are defined by what we roll. Now, we don't want to spoil what's in the book for everyone, so what we're going to do is just create one. So you get a flavour of it without seeing everything that's on the table. There are 8 tables, because there's an additional one at the end, each of which you roll a combination of d12s. So there's the variety of what you could roll. I'm sure there'll be a talented mathematician. Someone could.
Talented mathematician. Oh, you got a PhD. You could work out 8 times 12.
It's more complicated than 8
times 12. It's 12 to the power of 8.
But on table 1, for instance, you roll 3d12.
Oh, okay.
So, if there are any talented mathematicians who listen, please remember you can email us at thefellowshipphase@gmail.com. Thank you. And you could tell us how many combinations of... you'll need the book to do this. What we're going to do is I've got the book and Callum's got the D12. And we're
nice metal D12.
It's lovely, isn't it? I got given these for my anniversary from my wife. They are a full bronze set of D&D dice.
I love them.
They're lovely, aren't they? They also have dragons on them, which feels very in keeping. But we're going to create a nameless thing. So the first table requires 3 D12s.
Okay, here we go.
And this is what the thing is referred to.
Okay, here we go. 11. 3. 4.
Okay. It is the Lurker of the Abyss. That's what it's known by the elves. The Lurker of the Abyss is what this is known by the elves.
Ugh.
Yep, it feels pretty horrifying already. Table 2. The thing can be described as...
1.
And one more die as well, please.
9.
Bat-like with a swollen body. Our next table is going to be another 2d12, and this is when first encountered.
12. 2.
Okay, before you see it, you feel a terrible cold. And what you first see are its great claws. So what we've got so far, bat-like with a swollen body. You feel a terrible cold and see its great claws. Yeah, it's horrifying already. Now is a rumour about it. Just one roll, please.
2.
When Anuminus was young, the men of Arnor disturbed something monstrous that had been sleeping on the bottom of Lake Evendim for millennia. One summer night, the thing lashed out in fury at several ships anchored near the harbour, dragging them into the depths along with their crew. Then it disappeared. For a while. So that's the rumour about the Lurker of the Abyss. Now we move on to where it is remembered.
6.
Few traces remain of the countless generations of Northmen who inhabited the southeastern edge of Mirkwood. Among them is a burial monument covered in soft moss. An inscription speaks of the death of Serena, a village chief, probably, caused by a terrible thing that came out of the woods at night and could only be kept at bay by lighting large fires. So what we know is it began, or the rumour about the thing was that it slept under a lake, but now presumably it roams around the land and...
It immigrated.
Yes, it did.
I guess when Numinus fell and all the men of Arnor left, it was like, well...
It's time for me to go.
I'll have to go as well.
Now we get more onto some of its actual mechanical rules. We've got flavour of it. So this one, I need you to... Ooh! This one is a D20. Switching die.
Oh dear. The maths has gone all haywire. 7.
7. Okay, this is to do with its size. It is huge.
Makes sense.
This also then gives it some stats. So for instance, it has 15 AC. Its hit points are 175. That gives you a sense of how powerful it is.
That's crazy.
Or if you want to roll it yourself, it would be 14 d12 plus 84. And then it gives it its stats. It would have strength 23, but only dex of 8 and a con of 22. So we've got an incredibly strong, quite clumsy, huge bat-like creature with a swollen body which is cold and clawed and lives both in forests and lakes. It's horrifying. Now we do its attack,
Okay.
which is rolling 2d3, which I presume is wanting us to roll. Yeah.
That's a 2. And that's a 2.
Okay, so its primary attack is beak, bite, or horns. It's up to us what we would...
I'm going to go for bite.
Which would be a melee attack, and it goes into all the different stats depending on what size you rolled. And then it would have a slam, tail, or tentacle attack. I think if it's got a swollen body, a slam attack makes sense. Which is another melee attack, and again, it has its description, depending on what characteristics you rolled, will tell you the stats here. So this is now giving us the mechanical side of things. The final table is another d20, and this is its special trait.
6.
6. Horrible strength. The Nameless Things attacks deal 1 extra die of the damage.
Oh god.
And what you can do with this table is if you want to raise the challenge rating, what it says is just roll additional special traits. We'll raise the challenge rating by 1. So if we wanted to make this tougher, perhaps you could roll again and we'll give it an additional trait.
17.
Thick hide. Resistance to bludgeoning, piercing and slashing from non-magical weapons.
Oh god.
So this is a pretty horrific creature that we've created here. The Lurker from the Abyss, known by the elves, rumoured across the land. swollen bat-like creature, claws.
The Lurker of the Abyss, it was called by the elves. They said it was bat-like, with a swollen body. But before you saw it, you felt a terrible cold. And then, out of the darkness, you saw its great claws.
And that's taken us, what, 5 minutes to
Yeah.
get there with the rules? That's already a quite horrifying and I imagine unique, although our mathematician friends will tell us what the chances of rolling that again are. Now, what I wanted to talk about now was, we've created this, which is fun in and of itself. What would we now do with this nameless thing? Where would we fit this into a game as a lore master? When would you use this?
I think that I would... Oh, I don't know. I think there's a couple of options. We talked before we were recording about, this in itself, I think, just captures my imagination so much. I think if you wanted to do... I don't think the game is really designed for this as much as 5th edition, but if you wanted to do what we call a one-shot, I think this would be a great way of doing it. You just... Basically, you start by rolling up a nameless thing. That gives you a location, a rumour. That's the hook for the plot. And then you just run everything around that. And that's how you start.
So that would actually be the core of the adventure,
Yeah.
would be this nameless thing, and then the quest.
And I think the quest, you decide, I don't think the quest should be like, kill it, because I don't think that's a reasonable objective. I think it's more like, okay, I've rolled up this nameless thing. It's something to do with Numinous. Okay, what makes quests sense in that area? Okay, there's a group of Dunedain, and they've been tasked by Elrond, or they've discovered that there's some artifact in Numinous that they need to go and retrieve. And then this is actually, the adventure is, you build the adventure on this. Maybe you don't even tell the players that there's a nameless thing involved.
Yeah.
And then that just springs out, and it's suddenly like, the quest is retrieve the artifact, and this is the challenging part of it.
Yeah, I like that. So I suppose examples we see in Tolkien's work, the Watcher in the Water, basically is, it's not really the guardian of the Gate of Moria, because that kind of implies that it's there specifically for that, but it is an obstacle for them getting into.
Yeah, the objective there is get past or escape. Because they could have gone back. They tried to go back, and then yeah.
So the quest there could have been about getting into Moria, and again, you wouldn't even need to tell the players that this was potentially the finale to the quest.
Yeah.
They see the door. There's a puzzle there that's involved, and actually once they succeed with the puzzle, it triggers the end.
Yeah, it's a great
encounter.
adventure. Like, that's pretty awesome encounter right there, isn't it?
And the consequence is either they get inside, great, or maybe they have to flee, which creates potential for a future adventure, or maybe they all die.
So the Lurker of the Abyss by the elves that was in Numinas and now is Mirkwood Forest, which doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't quite make sense.
Why? But fine, we've rolled that. So let's roll with it. How would we, if we just plan an adventure using that? What would we do? It's in the forest.
If it's in the forest, if it's in Mirkwood, that kind of helps, because that's already a kind of a huge place, massive scale, a lot of unknowns, and it would make it very plausible for a creature to exist without being encountered by many people. You can think of, you would be able to, if we were running it in our game, so a game with many setions, you could introduce rumours.
Yeah,
when we encounter
you've got a rumour right there.
That this has been encountered or talked about, or it's in songs or whatever. We might need to sort of quest after it, or we might need to cross the forest and encounter it, or perhaps it is at a place that we need to drive it away from a particular place.
Yeah. I've got a thought. The abyss. Where's the abysses? Well, the mountains of Mirkwood, which are right in the middle, are not written about much, but the elves are meant to have maybe had refuges there. I'm not sure if that's original lore or the Adventures in Middle-earth book, but the elves are meant to have had refuges in the mountains. And so that would make sense as a rumour. The elves would remember this sort of thing. Yeah. There's some talk of like vampires and that sort of creature. So, I think I would probably place this in the mountains and have a quest which was, there's something to retrieve, some old elven lamp or artifact or some other thing that they need to get. And then they encounter this creature, and it's quite harrowing and it's cold. Maybe it's brought the cold from the north down with it. Maybe that's why it's still got the cold around it. I think to me that it really immediately, like the naming, the things I like the most is the like way that it approaches naming and creating it, rather than saying like, creating this fictional Tolkien lore, and it's so evocative.
Yeah, I think so. And the sheer number of possibilities that you could roll, and I think all of them to do with the names. I won't run through them because I think there's an enjoyment of if you're a player experiencing it for the first time, or if you got the book. They are specific enough to be evocative, but also vague enough that it doesn't confine you as the lore master to exactly one thing. That it still has that kind of unknown sense, and it leaves a lot with. Let me spin the book around for you there, Cal.
I'm just reading at the names because the peoples that can name them are, the normal men, elves, dwarves, etc. I was just wondering if there was one by the hobbits, because I quite like to mess with people, be like, it's the horror of the shadows by the hobbits, and then it turns out it's just like a particularly nasty dog. It's actually a really low level adventure for hobbits.
Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, one of the it can be known by is the wise. I imagine it would be pretty ominous if one of these creatures was known by the wise as something as powerful.
Yeah,
that would be quite frightening if that's what the wise is.
Saruman's talking about it. I think, the example there that we gave, and that was not pre-scripted.
No.
And, I think there is a bit about, obviously that rumour and the story didn't really match up. So probably the way I would approach it is, if I rolled something that didn't make sense, I would roll again. Yeah. Or I might choose something. If I've got the name and some of the stats already, I think I would be quite happy to just pick a rumour or make my own rumour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we've used previously with kind of backgrounds, is you can roll for like hopes and despairs, but you can also pick. The way I've normally done it is I've kind of rolled, and if I feel that maybe that really doesn't make sense or fit with the others, I might then pick. But I like that you kind of roll to give a sense of random and kind of creativity into it. So you could use it as an actual encounter, because there certainly are rules for this. I suppose you could use it just as a plot thing. So it's not something that you would actually fight. It would be more of an environmental thing rather than an actual mechanical thing, but you would maybe hear about it, or maybe it's had some effect on the world that then has a consequence for a quest.
You could describe it. You don't even need them to fight it. Like the Balrog is terrifying, and the Fellowship don't even.
Yeah, all they do is run away from it.
Yeah, and then even like Gandalf's fight, we don't see that. It's just heard about afterwards.
Yeah, and I mean we've previous episode talked about homebrewing monsters and how you would homebrew the Balrog, which you certainly could do. And actually, I think Gareth in our episode talking about Moria talked about how they've kind of statted out options for that. I
really want to see that.
Looking forward to that when the book's published. But you're right. In the canon, they escape from the Balrog. That's really more of a skill challenge or a chase scene. They don't actually fight it. I mean,
it's terrifying. It's terrifying
beyond all of them. So there are different ways you could deploy the Nameless Things. They're not like the creatures on the pages before, which are things like goblins, orcs, and undead, which are very clearly stat blocks that you would fight mechanically within the rules in combat, which have abilities and hit points. Nameless Things can, but I think you could use them without ever actually needing to roll the dice in-game.
I think I've just had an idea, which comes about from Gundabad a little bit, where you encountered a lot of orcs, and I didn't want it to just be like generic orcs.
Yeah.
What I really like is the Shadow of Mordor.
Yes, the game.
I was about to say Shadow of Mordor, which is not right. Shadow of Mordor games, they do a really good job of making the orcs have personalities and randomised, and it's one of the best bits of the game.
What's it called? There's a mechanic, the Nemesis?
Nemesis system, yeah. So actually, having one of these tables for orcs, Golb the Gobby.
Golb the Gobby.
That's
sounds more like a goblin than an orc. Like Golb the Bloody.
Golb the Hungry.
The Hungry. Oh, good, yeah.
Golb the Hungry, and he's going to gobble you up. That's not the best, but a table for orcs. Yeah. So when you're encountering, in a dangerous place and you encounter an orc, I get people to roll a couple of tables because I love nothing more than getting players to roll on tables and they don't know what they're rolling for. So ominous, and then it's suddenly like Gardouche the Betrayer, and you're like, whoa.
That's phenomenal. I quite like doing that, and I got the book for Mörkburg, the sort of heavy metal gothic apocalypse one, and it's very driven in a kind of old school role-playing sense of it's basically a book loads of randomly generated tables for monsters and names and themes of things. And I've done the same thing, which is sometimes when I've run a one shot, I've just rolled a load of dice and just been like, let's see what comes out of it, and the language that's used. And I think there's an art to writing the rules to fill them with this language that when you roll them randomly, it's so evocative that you're just like, great, here we go, there's a game ready to go.
Yeah.
With the Lurker of the Abyss.
The Lurker of the Abyss. Well, don't want to meet them in Abyss and Dark Knight, but maybe they're just misunderstood. Who knows?
There's not a table to roll on that.
Well, thanks very much, Josh. I'm looking forward to maybe running a one-shot with a Nameless Thing and reporting back about how it goes. No emails except on party business. And comments, suggestions and questions to thefellowshipphase@gmail.com. The long year turns to its close. Much we have accomplished these last seasons. Our fellowship disbands, but is not broken, and we will return.
On the next episode of The Fellowship Phase.